Hi friends, how are you today? My name is Bailey Sarian and today is Monday, which means it's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Monday. Hi, if you're new here, that's my new theme song. If you're new here, hi, my name is Bailey Sarian and on Mondays I sit down and I talk about a true crime story that's been heavy on my noggin and I do my makeup at the same time. If you're interested in true crime and you like makeup, I would say subscribe because I'm here for you on Mondays. Hey, before we get into today's episode, we do have a sponsor. Hey, it's summer, and I know that because I've been putting my jeans in the freezer lately before leaving the house. It's a pro tip, okay? First of all, it gets rid of the stench, but also it's like air conditioning on the go. Cold pants, come on, you're welcome. Anyway, summer means traveling, weddings, vacations, aka summer is expensive. All those little things add up. But luckily I found an app that rewards all those little purchases. It's called Upside. If you don't already know, the free Upside app gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and eating out. And this time of year, that's basically all I'm doing. Like recently I went on like a little road trip with my boyfriend and we stopped to get snacks because that's what you do. But you know, that all adds up. I gotta have the hot Cheetos. The hot Cheetos with lime. I gotta get the cream cheese to put my hot Cheetos in. Yes, I know, yeah. And it's all adding up. Anyway, with Upside, you can earn cash back at over 100,000 gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants. Like surprise, surprise, Taco Bell. Oh, God. Crunch Wrap Supreme Me, baby. And you can get cash back straight to your bank account. Here's how it works. You claim an offer in the app for whatever you're buying, pay like normal with your card, and then follow the steps in the app and boom, you get paid. No confusing rewards, no points that you forget that you have and they expire, just real money. Top Upside earners are making as much as $300 a month. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside and use code BAILEY to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's good to know because today I'm driving on empty because I don't want to go to the gas station, but can I use my code? I'm going to use my code. They don't know. Or scan the QR code here to claim this offer. A big thank you to Upside for sponsoring today's episode, but most of all, a big thank you to viewers like you, because without you, I wouldn't even be here. So now let's get into today's story. If you're ever curious to know what I'm using, I list in the description box down below. But let's talk about today, okay? Listen, in the quiet outskirts of Vancouver, surrounded by mud, pigs, and the stench of something far worse, a man built himself a kingdom, a pig farmer who threw wild parties, rubbed elbows with the Hells Angels, and ran shady charities, all while hiding one of the most horrifying secrets Canada has ever seen. His name, maybe you know, was Robert Pickton, also known as the Pig Farmer Killer or the Butcher. Oh, this man lured women to his farm and never let them leave. But here's the question. Was this really the work of one man? Or was something bigger, darker, and more organized going on? Yep. Disclaimer. Today's episode contains discussions of violence, murder, and sensitive topics that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. So let's get into Mr. Robert Pickton. So Robert Pickton was born on October 24th, 1949. So he's a Scorpio. But he grew up in a small town. Well, it was like a small growing industrial suburb called Port Coquitlam. How'd I do? Coquitlam? Well, it's just outside of Vancouver in Canada. Okay. Now at this time there were like a lot of farmers, railroad workers, and like manufacturing industries in this area. It was said that when Robert was born, his umbilical cord was like wrapped around his neck, which had cut off oxygen to his brain for a good amount of time. At least that's what like the family said. And like the family would point to this as to why Robert grew up as he was a little off odd, you could say. The Pickton family bought and operated like a really big farm where they raised pigs and cattle and then, slaughtered them. And again, like this farm was pretty damn big. It was at least like 30 acres. Robert's father, he was around, but it was said that his mom was mainly the one who ran the business. Like she was very strict. She was a workaholic. I think she was just freaking maintaining this farm. It's huge. Okay. So she's really like running the show. Now, Robert also had 2 siblings, an older sister named Linda and a younger brother named Dave. Now, I guess when Linda was younger, the mom decided like to send her away to go live with family or something because according to her, she's like, the farm is no place for a girl to be growing up. So Linda gets sent away. Honestly, if I were Linda, I'd be like, thank God. Farm life? Not for me, baby. So Linda, gone. Bye. Meanwhile, Robert and Dave, they were the ones who were working alongside their mom, really maintaining the farm, and they would do so like before school and after school. It was their whole life and their livelihood, really. So I guess the kids, like their dad was around, but I don't know. He just didn't seem to really be as involved. I don't know. He was giving me kind of like the more passive one in the marriage. Like, there really wasn't much said about him. Well, Robert, growing up, he goes to school and whatnot, and he's really not doing very well. He was a little slower than, the others, and was placed in special education classes. And then on top of that, he really struggled to have friends. Also, it didn't help that he was known for not having the best hygiene. Yeah. While working out on the farm, he would get dirty and stuff, as you do, and he would have a certain smell. And people noticed. I guess he didn't bathe often, and, he's weird. I don't want to say he's weird. He's weird. He's weird. He has a stench. So he was pretty antisocial. And honestly, I was reading all that, and I was like, it sounds like he was just straight up neglected, but okay. When Robert was 12, he got a pet calf at the farm, okay? Now, he loved this calf. He would rush home every single day after school to go see him. I mean, this was like his best friend. Well, one day, Robert came home, excited to see his calf, but he couldn't find him anywhere. So he's going around asking the family, like, where's my calf? So he was told to go check the barn. Now, this made Robert panic because he knew that the barn was the place where animals went to die. Robert told his calf to never go down to that barn. He looked that calf in the face and was like, don't ever go down to that barn. But sure enough, as soon as he walked in, he saw his best friend hanging from the ceiling, gutted, butchered. Tragic. Robert later said like this was the moment where he really kind of understood death, and it was just also devastating. Well, life goes on, and when Robert is 18 years old, some shit goes down. Okay, so he has a younger brother, Dave. So Dave finally gets his driver's license. So he's all excited. He's like, "Yay, got my driver's license!" And one day he goes out for a drive. So Dave is out driving, and he ends up like hitting a kid with his car. Now, instead of getting out of the car and being like, "Hey, you good?" he instead flees the scene. He races back home, like in a panic. He goes straight to his mom. He tells his mom everything that happened. And he's asking her, like, what do I do? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe call the police and say you accidentally hit someone. Just a thought. I don't know. But what do I know? So their mom has Dave drive she and him back to the scene where they see the kid like lying on the road. The mom, Dave's in the car still. The mom gets out of the car and she ends up rolling the kid to the side of the road and into a water-filled ditch, which I guess was like hard to see from the main road. Then she kind of like dusts her hands off and she's like, okay. Yeah. She gets back into the car. She tells Dave to just drive them back home. Yeah. She literally just rolled this poor boy into a ditch and then headed home like nothing. Now, see, I guess Robert technically, like, he didn't witness this firsthand, but he heard about it when the family was talking about it that day. Well, the poor kid, his parents are all worried, looking for him. His body ends up being found, and an investigation begins like immediately. It didn't take long for the police to lead right back to Dave. He was immediately a suspect. Now, everything about this case, like this situation, is sealed. I'm assuming because he was underage, so it's not really clear what happened to Dave. But what we do know was that he ended up going to juvenile court, so that's something. But Robert and Dave's mom, she was never charged or arrested for her involvement. So Dave must have, I don't know. I was going to say maybe Dave kept his mouth shut about his mom. I would be like, it was my mom. She did that shit. But that's just me, I guess. Now, this feels like the first time Robert realized just how far his mom would go for them, and that sometimes crime doesn't come with a punishment. And maybe Dave is thinking the same thing too. Looking at you, Dave. So when Robert was around 28 or 29, he had a major loss. First, his father passes away. And then just a year later, his mom passes away. So his mom, she had a will, and in it said that the 3 kids, remember there was Linda, Dave, and Robert, they would split the family money and the land evenly. Now, Robert was named as the one to inherit the family business, run the farm essentially, but he wouldn't receive any money from the trust until he turned 40. So it's kind of okay, thanks, I guess. I don't know how he's feeling. But the family seemed to be having a bit of a bad run, because soon after the parents passed away, the farm somehow caught on fire, again leading to just another major loss. Now, the family farm was completely destroyed. It killed around 600 pigs. Now, luckily, around 100 pigs and 120 cattle would survive the fire, but a lot was gone. It's unclear how the fire started, but Robert was the one left to rebuild. This is a side note in my own personal opinion, but I kind of low-key think that this was done on purpose for insurance money or something. But we'll talk about that later. Robert rebuilt the farm, and when he was doing that, he decided to make a few changes to the business. So he added more animals like chickens, rabbits, geese, goats, emu. I was struggling with emu animals. And he still had the cattle and the pigs. I mean, he was a full-on old MacDonald had a farm kind of guy. Okay. Also a new addition to the business, Robert started working with another butcher in town named Pat. So Robert, he would raise, the pigs, and then Pat would come in, buy the pigs, and then they would slaughter and sell the meat. It was a good partnership for them. It seemed to work. So Robert, he's kind of thriving at this point. Now, his brother Dave, he was around. He was working as a demolition contractor for the greater Vancouver area. And for bigger jobs, he would call up his brother Robert to come out and help him. But those were just their day jobs. Because it was said that Robert and Dave would also indulge in some local insurance fraud. I guess local bikers in the area, they would steal cars and bikes, and then they would give them to Robert or Dave. And since Dave had access to demolition equipment, they were able to bury the stolen items. Once the job was done, they would report the cars or whatever, as missing or stolen. And then they would collect the insurance money. See, this is why I kind of low-key think that farm fire was an insurance thing, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, they were shady. Now, they were doing this for a hot minute, but the police, they ended up catching on, and they opened an investigation into these thefts, which ended up leading them right to Dave. Now, Dave, I guess he was brought in and he was questioned, but they didn't have sufficient evidence to make an actual arrest. So he was let go. Robert was never questioned, but this did land him on the police's radar for the first time. So in 1994, Dave had a big job up in North Vancouver. It was a 40-minute drive from the farm. So he called up his brother Robert. He's like, hey, can you come out and stay with me and help me out? So Robert agrees, and he goes out there, he sets up his motorhome on the construction site so he didn't have to commute, you know? So Robert would stay on this project with Dave for like about a year. During this time, their sister Linda, she was like a hotshot realtor now. She made the decision to sell off 3 separate parts of the farm to real estate investors who were looking to build homes. Now, I'm sure it was all communicated to Dave and Robert about selling, parts of the farm. But overall, like, it was a good deal because they made over $5 million on that sale, and they ended up splitting it evenly. I mean, it was fine though. Yes, the farm was smaller now, but they still had about 25 acres to work with, which, a lot, you know? Oh, just a little side note, I forgot to mention. When like Robert's away, he had people working for him on the farm. So like things are still being taken care of while Robert's away and stuff. So it wasn't like he just left it and that was it. So while Robert was staying in North Vancouver, he started to hang out in this area called the Low Track, and it was in like the downtown east side area of Vancouver. Now, the Low Track was a place where, drugs, poverty, and sex work was very prominent. So Robert, on his free time, he would go hang out at this bar called the Abbey Hotel, where he would meet up with some friends. I'm like giving a side eye because I'm like, friends, okay. But he would meet up with some people for drinks, and then he would really go there to engage with the sex workers and see if they'd be willing to go home with him. He would offer them money for drugs or just drugs in hopes that they would leave with him. So Robert would invite them either back to his motorhome, which was like 15 minutes away, or to go back to his farm, which was about 40 minutes away, where they could, quote unquote, party more. He did this for years. Then in 1996, Robert and Dave decided to start another business. They thought, hey, idea, why don't we do a non-profit charity? Yeah, I mean, they had this huge farm with lots of land. They're like, we could open it there. It could be a non-profit. It could have a mission. Well, according to them, the nonprofit's mission was to, quote, to organize, coordinate, manage, and operate special events, functions, dances, shows, and exhibitions on behalf of service organizations, sports organizations, and other worthy groups, end quote. And they're like, great, like, what do we call it? They decided to call it the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. Just really rolls off the tongue. Piggy Palace Good Time Society. It honestly sounds like a good pizza place, right? Oh, I'm going down to the Piggy Palace to get some good pizza. Actually, after today's story, that's bad. That's bad because never mind. But it sounds like pizza. Great, Bailey. Well, unfortunately, this was no charity. This was no nonprofit. Instead, it was really a front to cover up the illegal bar they set up in one of the slaughterhouses. Yeah, beer and slaughter. So, yay. The Piggy Palace, though, very popular. They had wild raves. There was extreme debauchery going on. Dave, remember the brother? Yeah, he was like great friends with the Hells Angels, a notorious biker gang with a reputation for violence, loyalty, and running illegal enterprises worldwide. Yeah, he's friends with them. So he decided to hire some of the members as security at the Piggy Palace. Now, some people believe that Dave was actually a member himself, but that's never been confirmed. But they would throw these wild parties. Robert and Pat, the butcher guy, they were there at these parties. They'd be cutting up meat, barbecuing. It sounds like a good time, kind of, not really. Kind of, anyways, people loved it there. It was said that on any given night, there would be up to like 2,000 people who would show up. Yeah, huge, right? It was a well-known party spot. So the Piggy Palace really seemed to be the place to go to do like illegal and questionable activities. But regardless, or because of this, it was very popular. so popular that off-duty cops and city officials were regular attendees at the Piggy Palace. Oh yes. Oh yes. I wish I could give you names, but it was like, it's so hard to actually find names. It's just people who were like, yeah, I saw that guy's a cop there or whatever, you know? Even though Robert didn't have any issues with the cops at the Piggy Palace, he did make several decisions that eventually made him a person worth looking into. You see, in March of 1997, Robert, he went over to the low track area and he offered a sex worker named Wendy drugs and $100 to go out to the farm with him, you know, and she accepted. So they drive out there, and when they get to the property, they head to his trailer. When Wendy gets inside of the trailer, she like is looking around and she notices that there is a sleeping bag on the floor and a large roll of like clear plastic next to it. She's like, love your decor. It's cool. Okay. They do the deed. Wendy gets her money. Then she heads to the bathroom. When she comes out, she asks Robert if she could use his phone. And he's like, sure, here. So Wendy, she's on the phone and she notices that Robert is like coming towards her. She's like, what? Robert then tries to slip a handcuff on her wrist. So she's like, what the fuck? No. And she immediately starts to fight back. So there was a struggle. They were like wrestling and fighting and like going back and forth, kind of making their way into the kitchen area. So when they're in the kitchen area, she notices a knife. She grabs the knife. She starts slashing at Robert. She stabs him in the arm, and then she slashes his face from ear to ear. Then, good for her, then she gets him good, because the knife, she stabs him, the knife ends up like chipping a bunch of his teeth as it went through his face. She's just going. So then she tries to make a run for it, but Robert somehow grabs her, and then according to Wendy, like things really just kind of got fuzzy here. But she does remember that they somehow ended up outside the trailer, now fighting by Robert's truck. So at this point, Wendy is, she still has the knife. It's in her hand. And according to her, she just stabbed him right in the back, and then he went down. So she's like, oh shit, you know, she needs to like get help. So she runs to the nearest house, knocking on the door, no one answers. Then she sees a car coming down the road. So she runs out and she like flags them down. It was like an older couple that was driving the car, and they agreed to take her to the hospital. But before they drive off, Wendy points to the trailer and she tells them that like, look, if I die, the man that killed me lives in that trailer. And then they drive off. So at some point during this whole fight, Robert was able to stab Wendy. Like she had noticed she was bleeding from like her stomach area. She doesn't know like when it happened, but she knew she was bleeding. So the couple that picked her up, they take her to the hospital. When she gets here, she's, you know, taken back to go into like surgery. And the couple that took her to the hospital, they tell the staff that there was a man back at the location who was also hurt. So this part honestly was like a little confusing, because somebody goes back to Robert's place and picks him up and brings him to the hospital. I'm thinking maybe, is that like free healthcare? Because in America, people would be like, so? Anyways, but Robert, I guess, is picked up by an ambulance or something and is brought to the hospital. He's given like 150 stitches, and then he was released. Yeah. I was like, that's nice. He was released, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, why the hell wasn't he arrested? And honestly, couldn't quite find a clear answer. I think my assumption is that the police had to wait for a statement from Wendy, and at this point she was like undergoing surgery. She was not fully there. But it's unclear why Robert was just sent home. So all this happens, Robert is released, and word gets back to Robert's brother, Dave, about what happened. So Dave calls up an old like family friend. Her name is Lisa. Dave asked Lisa to stay at the farm and take care of Robert while he was healing. And in return, Dave said that he would pay for her car insurance and like help her out or whatever, you know? So Lisa agrees and she moves in. She goes to the farm, she moves in for a bit, and she's staying like in Robert's trailer. So Robert is back at the farm, you know, he's down, and Lisa's there. And Lisa, she starts looking around. Maybe like snooping a little bit. I don't know. She's just like looking around as you do when you're in someone else's house, maybe. I don't know. But she's looking around and she starts like noticing some odd things. First, she like came across a bunch of IDs, okay, like ID cards. And they belong to like a bunch of different women. And she's like, okay, like, that's weird. Then she found a bunch of different women's clothing. She's like, okay, also weird. Then she like looked a little closer. On some of the clothing, she noticed some of them had blood all over them. I don't know about you, but I would be out the door. I'd be like, okay, thank you so much for your time. Bye. She takes note, okay? She takes note. Well, Robert, I guess he's like high on pain pills. He starts talking to Lisa. He's like saying some weird off the wall things. He was going on about how he wanted to finish off Wendy. Then Robert asked Lisa to get him some syringes. He specifically asked her to get half clean ones and half already used ones. Now, Lisa saw this as like a big red flag for many reasons, but one that stood out the most, I guess, was that he was asking for syringes and she knew he wasn't a drug user. So she's like, why do you need those? Yeah, I know. You think it would be the blood on the clothes, but no, it was the syringes. Now, Lisa, she didn't go to police or anything, you know. Instead, she ends up telling a mutual friend, this guy, he worked on the Pickton farm. His name was Bill. So she goes to Bill and she tells him, like, she's like, low-key, I think Robert could be a serial killer. Okay, she's like, the IDs, the blood-stained clothing, the syringes. What is he, like poisoning people or something? She's telling this to Bill. Well, 17 days after the attack, Wendy, she luckily survived and she told the police everything. So finally, Robert was arrested and charged for attempted murder, unlawful confinement, and aggravated assault. Now remember, the Pickton family, they had money. So he was able to hire the best criminal defense attorney in Vancouver. But when it came time for the trial to start in January of 1998, Wendy didn't show up. So without an accuser, the judge was forced to drop all of the charges. The police did keep the clothes and the rubber boots that he was wearing when he attacked Wendy, and they kept that in evidence, which good thing they did because it comes in handy later. So a few months after the charges were dropped, Robert, he goes back to the low track and he picks up a woman named Sarah. Now, Sarah, she worked out of this place called the Crack Shack. Yeah, it was a really popular pickup location for sex workers, but also I guess they had really great drugs. But he goes there. So on that night in April of 1998, Sarah and her friend, they were strolling the area looking for dates. So the friend, Sarah's friend, was picked up by a John and they took off. So she's telling Sarah I'll see you later, whatever, The friend comes back, and when she gets back to the Crack Shack area, she notices that Sarah was nowhere to be found. Now, that's fine normally because it's maybe she got picked up, whatever. But it was odd because she noticed that Sarah's purse was still there. Now, you never leave your purse behind. So she just kind of waited around and Sarah just never showed up. So after some time goes by and Sarah is a no-show, her ex-boyfriend and some friends and family, they went to the police and reported her missing. So the police just straight up told them that they wouldn't open an investigation because she was just the latest in a string of missing sex workers. And that they usually show back up and it's really not a big deal. The police completely brushed it off. Well, time is still going by and Sarah, she's still missing. So her ex-boyfriend ends up reaching out to a journalist named Lindsay Kynes, who was writing articles about missing sex workers in the area. This guy was the only one reporting it, it seemed like. So Sarah's ex-boyfriend reaches out to the journalist, and Lindsay Kynes, the journalist, decided to write an article about the situation and called out the police for not taking these disappearances seriously. The journalist was like passionate about getting this news out to the public and really demanding for the police to step up and do their job. In July of like 1998, like the first article about the situation was published, and then it ended up turning into an 11-part series. And in the articles, they also put a hotline number where people could reach out, give tips, or just report more missing women. So this journalist was like really trying to actually do something, because obviously the police were not. Okay, so do you remember Lisa? Huh? Do you? Okay, well, she was the lady friend who was staying with Robert and found all those questionable items. And then she went to Bill and told him all about it. Her? Yeah. Bill reads one of those articles, and he decides to get in contact with Sarah's ex-boyfriend to share what he knew. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't Bill just call the hotline or go to the police or something like that? Or why didn't Lisa go to the police? You have to understand, a lot of them were involved with drugs or sex work, and they didn't want to go to police in fear that they would get in trouble themselves. So they were all talking with each other in hopes someone else would maybe go forward, So Bill contacts Sarah's ex and tells him everything that Lisa saw: the bloody clothes, the IDs, the syringes, everything. Then went on to say that Robert often visited the load track to pick up women. But most of all, Robert had like this really big farm, and Bill's like, it would be very easy to hide things there, like people. You know what I'm saying? Bill actually tells Sarah's ex that he did try to contact police at some point, but he was told that there was nothing the police, could do. So Bill gave Sarah's ex Robert Pickton's name and the name of his businesses, the farm, everything, in hopes that maybe, he could help or do something. So Sarah's ex ends up contacting Vancouver police, tells them everything that Bill said. Well, technically he was recording the whole conversation, so he actually gives them the recording. And the police, they tried to follow up with Bill for months. Like they tried, but Bill had addiction issues of his own, and he was really hard to track down. So it definitely slowed things down. But there were 2 Vancouver Police Department investigators who were actually like paying attention to all these disappearances. At this point in 1998, in the Vancouver area, there were about 35 missing women on their list. So they were really thinking like a serial killer was in the area. So they brought on Deputy Inspector Kim Rossmo to help, who was like very well known for his work in criminal profiling. So Kim Rossmo helped put together a computer program called Rigel. Now Rigel like analyzed crime details, it calculated the chances the crimes were linked, and even identified potential suspects or serial offenders. And it turned out to be a very powerful tool. But at this time, it was 1998, okay, and technology like this was new, and a lot of the higher ups at the Vancouver Police Department, they did not like or trust this new guy, Inspector Rossmo, coming in with his little computer program and telling them what to do. I know, it sounds like such a freaking joke, but it's true. So the police just didn't use this tool. Later on, one of the investigators that asked for Inspector Rossmo's help said, quote, Pickton would have been in jail and all those women would have been saved, end quote, had the higher-ups taken him, Rossmo, or the case seriously. In September of 1998, another article by Lindsay Kynes came out about the missing women, And again, once again, was going in hard, calling out the police for not doing anything. Now, people in the area who are reading the article, they're becoming outraged. They're demanding that the police step up, that they do something. And honestly, like those articles, they really generated a lot of buzz and actually caught the attention of the television program America's Most Wanted. And they did a full-on episode about the missing women. They also offered like $100,000 reward for information about the case. So this was good for the victims' families and whatnot. Like at least someone is helping or trying to help, talking about it, right? Well, the Vancouver police, they're a little like annoyed and upset, and they couldn't handle the negative PR anymore. So they were like, fine, we'll do something. It was said that before these articles came out, there was this unspoken rule amongst the police departments, that sex workers and lower class people were disposable. And it was suggested to not waste resources on them, allegedly. But I'm sure we believe that because they did nothing. Well, now Inspector Rossmo was confident that like his technology could actually help catch this person, right? So he shared his findings with the police department, but they completely dismissed him. On top of that, he was pretty much fired. He was let go. Well, technically, his contract didn't get renewed, but he knew why. So Inspector Rossmo was just trying to help. I don't know, maybe even like do his job, right? Luckily, there were some in the police department that were like still taking this seriously. And in May of 1999, the Vancouver Police Department organized a group who were dedicated to review the growing number of disappearances of women in the area. And this like dedicated team to the case, it was called Project Amelia. So Project Amelia was able to gather a lot of DNA, information about the missing women, and even received tips mentioning Robert Pickton by name. So the police, they did take this seriously, and they followed Robert. They followed him around for about like 2 weeks, but they saw no unusual activity or much of anything. Plus, at this time, they had no witness statements or anyone coming forward. So it was just kind of like they couldn't do anything. Over in Port Coquitlam, officers also had like Robert on their radar, but without, again, anyone coming forward, anyone accusing him of anything, there was nothing they could do. So things just went cold. Everything was at a standstill. But in the year 2000, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, aka the Mounties, they got a hot tip. So Robert, he had a lot of like on again, off again girlfriends. I didn't mention them because all the names get confusing. For me at least. But one of his like on again, off again girlfriends was a woman named Lynn. So Lynn, she went to the Mounties and she told them everything she knew. Lynn told them that she actually lived with Robert for a few months in 1999. That they slept together, she cleaned his trailer, he'd supply her with drugs, and occasionally the two of them would go out and pick up sex workers to bring back to the farm. She said that there was this one night where she and Robert, they went to New Westminster and they picked up a sex worker. When they got back to the farm, the woman and Robert went to the trailer to have sexual relations. So Lynn, I guess she was out in the living room. She's just kind of waiting and she starts to doze off. She said all of a sudden she was woken up by like a super loud noise, and there was like this very bright light coming from the barn outside on the property. So she's, like, what is going on? So she gets up and she goes to check it out. She said that she walked into the barn and that she was immediately hit with like a terrible smell. Okay, so she's like, Then she kind of like looks directly, directly in front of her, and she realizes that she's staring at someone's toes. So she's trying to like process, what am I looking at? And she looks up and she sees that it's freaking body or something. Someone's legs are dangling from the ceiling. What's that one meme? No, 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 no. That'd be me right now. No. So Lynn, she's like, oh my God, what the fuck? So she screams, obviously. She's in total shock. Robert, he's in there. He pulls her like further into the barn and he closes the door. Lynn said that she like looked around. She's like looking around, right? And she notices that on the table, it was covered in blood and there were like dark clumps of hair on it. She's like, what the fuck? She looks at Robert and she realizes that he is covered in blood as well. No. That's all I could think of. My brain just went there. Poor Lynn. Lynn said she was completely frozen. She's trying to comprehend, what the hell am I seeing right now? But she knew that this person that was hanging was the woman that they had just brought back to the farm because she recognized the red toenail polish. Trauma. Oh gosh. So I guess Robert, he's like trying to calm her down and he tells her, quote, she's just like a pig anyways. It's all right. It's going to be all right. End quote. Okay. Robert then threatened her by saying, like, if you say a word to anybody or do anything, you will be right beside her. So Lynn freaked the F out. She wants to get out of there. But he like won't let her out of his sight. Eventually though, he ends up calling her a cab. He gave her $100 so she could buy drugs and liquor, and then told her that he would pick her up the next day. When this originally happened, it messed Lynn up. Like, she ended up fleeing the area. She went off the radar for a bit and she was gone. But finally, she wanted to come forward and report her experience. And this was like, great. This is exactly what they needed, right? Well, unfortunately, something happened. Personally, I think Lynn was threatened by someone because she ended up going back and recanting her statement, saying that she made it up. No. The Mounties, I guess they did question Robert, but like he didn't say a peep. And without Lynn's statement, they had nothing. And once again, like they were back at square one. In 2001, Robert, still doing his thing at the farm, working with his butcher partner, Pat, and at times he would be working with his brother, Dave, like with his business. I guess a year earlier, in the year 2000, the Piggy Palace Good Time Society, they had lost like their nonprofit status and they were formally disbanded for failing to file required financial statements. So they had to shut down. So like with this loss of income from the parties or whatever the F they were doing, Robert, Dave, and their sister Linda ended up selling more of the farmland, and they invested in rental properties. Well, over in Vancouver, the police department, they were making no progress. They were very high and mighty, telling everyone there was no serial killer in the area. Like, shut up, you guys. Get over it. But the public, they didn't believe them. They did not believe them. That internal team called Project Amelia, they completed their case review saying that there were now 45 missing sex workers from the Low Track area. So like the number was growing. Or someone just wasn't being honest about the number. Either way, 45 women. So naturally, our favorite journalist, Lindsay Kynes, put out another article about the missing women and like actually giving a full number based off of that report. And the public, again, putting more and more pressure on the Vancouver police to do something. So the police decided to actually invest more resources into the investigations and started to work with other departments and agencies, finally. So the Vancouver Police Department, they ended up interviewing 130 sex workers in the area, and they asked the women, like, hey, have you ever had a bad date experience? Or like a man who just really scared them. You know, they were looking for a pattern, a name that was repeated over and over again. And throughout the interviews, Robert's name did not really come up. But you know whose name did come up? His brother Dave. Isn't that weird? Yeah, and it wasn't just like one time. It was a handful of times. You know what's even more weird? They kept getting the name Dave Pickton. And you know what's the most weirdest thing of all? He was never brought in for questioning that we know of. Now, tell me what that's about. Now, it was said that this is what like got the Pickton name on their radar again. But I could sit here forever going like this, because why wasn't Dave brought in? Just a little weird, isn't it? Anyway, so the Pickton name is on their radar again. So in late 2001, once again, police finally got the information that they needed. Solid information on Robert Pickton, a former employee who who worked on the farm for Robert. He shared with the police that Robert, had several unregistered and illegal firearms on his property. And with this information, police were finally able to get a search warrant for the farm. I know. Because I was like, so it wasn't the other allegations and stuff that was mentioned. It was the firearms. But okay, fine. Like, it's movement. It's movement. But at least now they got their in. They finally got a warrant. While filing the warrant request, the investigator from Port Coquitlam, PD, they saw a note on Robert's file saying to contact Vancouver police if anything came up. Yeah, so this little note and all that connected all the investigating police departments for the very first time. Because this entire time, they were not talking to each other, these departments, because Vancouver had their own police, Port, they had their own police, New Westminster, the Mounties, none of them were talking to each other. I know, very frustrating. So on February 5th, 2002, police were finally able to search Robert Pickton's farm. Thank God. So he was arrested. Did I mention that? Well, he was arrested. Okay, so he was taken away. Now they're able to search his farm. Mind you, it's huge property. So they look in his trailer and they see, this is where he had been living majority of the time. They found handcuffs, zip ties, a paper that had a list of women's names on it. They found women's clothing, purses, illegal guns, sex toys. And based off the images I saw, I was like, it was dirty. Never seen a duster before. That place had never been dusted. And then they found a very questionable item. It was a Weston 22 revolver, okay, with a curved plastic dildo covering the barrel. I was like, what? Robert said he used it as a silencer. Yeah. I was like, points for creativity, I guess. Oh, God. My nasty brain, and maybe your nasty brain went there too. I was thinking, did he insert it and then shoot it? I don't know. Anywho. So also in Robert's trailer, police found an inhaler. And this inhaler belonged to a woman named Sarian, who had just recently disappeared from Vancouver. Now, this discovery was the missing link that allowed the Vancouver police to now join the search at the Pickton Farms for their own investigation. So again, Robert was arrested and he was being charged with storing a firearm, possession of a firearm without a license, and possession of a loaded, restricted firearm without a license. And I was like, yay, finally. But don't get too excited, because literally, the next afternoon, Robert was released on bail. Yeah. Remember, this family, the Pickton family, they actually had money. Yeah, they act like trash, but they had the cash, and they bailed his ass out. So they bailed him out, and Robert was not allowed back at the farm because now it was considered a crime scene. So he ended up staying with his brother Dave, which was just right down the road. Now, I guess for police, searching the Pickton farm was very difficult and taxing. Now, at this point, it was 17 acres. There were live animals that still needed to be cared for. And I guess there were a bunch of dead animals all over the property. So the task force, they used heavy machinery I tried to explain it in a way that made sense, but they pretty much teared up the ground. Then they ran the dirt through a huge conveyor belt and screening machine, sifting for any trace of evidence that they could find. But it was a lot. It was a lot of work. Police collected a lot of DNA from Robert's trailer and just all around the property. Now, it wasn't just female DNA. No. They found about 40 male DNA samples as well. There's a lot of shit going on. Now, there was one specific DNA sample that led to Robert's rearrest. So on February 22nd, this was 17 days after his initial arrest, police found DNA in his trailer from a woman who, again, had recently disappeared. Remember, they found that inhaler from a missing woman, but finding DNA was the concrete proof that they needed. Because in an inhaler, they can be maybe she left it here or whatever. But DNA, blood, something like that, They arrest Robert that day and they put him in a holding cell, okay? But the police, they knew he's a tricky man, a quiet man, slick man. And police needed to get some kind of confession out of him. So they put Robert in a jail cell, and in the same cell, they brought in an undercover cop acting as an inmate. Now, his job, the undercover cop, was to strike up a conversation with Robert and get him talking, bond a little bit, in hopes to get a confession. Meanwhile, their whole interaction was being recorded. So after some shooting the shit kind of talk, for several hours, Robert started to open up, bragging about his crimes. Oh, yes. So on the hidden recording, Robert admitted to killing 49 women and said his only regret was that he didn't make it to 50.
I was only one more, maybe 50. That's what I was stopping people for. Yeah. I wanted one more, make it be a big battle. Big fight.
The task force continued to search the farm. So when they were searching, they found human bones, flesh, hair, teeth, skin, nails. That's not all. They found body parts in some of the freezers where the pork was stored, and several heads that had been sawed in half. Yeah, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know. Even more disturbing, kinda. Yeah. All of it's disturbing. The police found 3 bags full of ground meat that had human remains mixed into it. Yeah, I know. Was he selling it? Did he eat it? Was he eating it? Did his partner, Butcher Pat, know about this? Was he involved? I had so many questions. There was also evidence that some pigs on the farm may have consumed human remains, given that the bodies that they found were left in the areas where the pigs ate their food. And rumor has it, pigs eat anything. I thought pigs are picky, and they are not. They will eat you right up. Now, unfortunately, some of the DNA samples didn't provide enough evidence to be added to his charge list. But in the end, though, Robert was charged with 27 counts of first-degree murder. And his dumbass pled not guilty to all counts. He's like, it was the pigs. It wasn't me. So he's sitting in jail waiting, and like 5 years go by. Finally, his trial starts. It's in January of 2007. So this time, they were able to bring in some key witnesses. His ex-girlfriend, Lynn, remember her, who saw the body in the barn? And also his partner, Butcher Pat. Now get this, both of them, Lynn and Pat, they were both originally arrested for their involvement with the murders as well. But both of them took plea deals and testified against Robert. I know. I was like, wait. So were they involved and they were just taking the plea deal? What? But most of all, I was like, what about Dave, though? Where's Dave? Or Linda, the sister? I don't know if she was involved or anything, but like, something's going on, right? So in court, it came out that over 80 different DNA samples were discovered, like at the scene, including some DNA from the rubber boots collected from Robert's fight with Wendy, his sole survivor. Yeah, remember I told you that would come in handy. Robert's defense lawyers claimed that the farm was like a beehive of activity, that other persons, unknown and known, used Robert's place to kill the women without him being involved. And that would explain why there was so much DNA found at the farm, both male and female. His defense also said that, Robert's intelligence very low, so his confession was just made up, and that he was just trying to impress his cellmate. Robert's team, they, cross-examined Lynn, and they questioned, why she took her original statement back when she first shared it with the Mounties. And they're giving her a hard time about that. And Lynn told the court, that she feared for her life. But now that Robert had been arrested, she felt safe telling the story or sharing her experience, and she was sticking with it. So on December 9th, 2007, Mr. Robert Pickton, he was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder, even though he was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder. I know. I was like, wait, what? Huh? Why second? See, in Canada, the difference between first-degree and second-degree murder comes down to how much planning was involved. First-degree is premeditated, carefully planned out, while second-degree is more spontaneous, more like a crime of opportunity. Regardless, Robert received a sentence of 25 years to life. About damn time. Look, in 2010, Robert's lawyers, they felt that his conviction was the result of an unfair trial, and they filed for an appeal. It went to the Supreme Court of Canada, and they were like, no, dude. They ruled that the conviction still stood. There's a lot more nitty-gritty detail there, but at the end of the day, everything stood still. Or still stood. You get it. Now, once the trial was over, the Vancouver Police Department, they had problems of their own, because an investigation was opened regarding their handling of this entire case. I mean, obviously, they freaking blew it, right? How they handled everything. The lieutenant governor and council ordered an inquiry, and in 2012, when the report was done, and they realized that the police department seriously dropped the freaking ball, it led to 63 recommendations for improvement to ensure this never happens again. Have they applied these 63 recommendations since then? I hope so, but let's be real here. I don't know. I want to think yes, but hopefully. So, where are they now? Well, Robert was kept in a maximum security prison, and just last year, in May of 2024, I was like, what? He was attacked by another inmate, left him in a coma, and then Robert Pickton, he died on May 30th, 2024. Wow. His brother Dave, I was looking at you, Dave. I was looking at you, Googling you, trying to find out everything I could about you. Because something ain't right with you, Dave. Dave, in my personal opinion, literally got away with everything, is still living and working in the greater Vancouver area, running a demolition business. His sister, Linda, remember Linda? Yeah, not much is known about her, obviously. She really seemed to like stay out of everything. I just get a... Don't you get a little like, feeling? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. After all of this, though, so after Robert was convicted and everything, Linda and Dave, they actually sued the city and the police for not receiving money to repair damages made to the farm during their search. I was like, get the fuck over it. They also, in the end, like sold off most of the farm, and now there are homes and commercial properties on the land. I did a little Google Street View and I was like, ugh. Cute little house on an area where there were bodies and stuff. Okay, that's fine though. So some of the families of the victims, they actually banded together to sue the city, provincial, and federal governments, as well as the RCMP and Vancouver police, plus Robert's siblings. The families believed that the siblings had to know what Robert was doing. They just felt they had to know. But without any like physical proof, the siblings, they were dropped from the lawsuit. But, you know, all the government and the police and all that, they still were being sued. And the case ended up settling, and the victims, their families, did receive compensation. It doesn't bring the victims back, but, you know, it's a small, like, accountability win, I guess. I don't know. In a wild turn of events, Robert's ex-girlfriend, Lynn, who testified against him in court, well, she ended up getting convicted and, like, sentenced to 12-month suspension for threatening her boss and her boss's family on like numerous occasions in October of 2022. And the only reason I bring that up is because there was rumors that Lynn was involved with the situation that was going down on Robert's farm, but also because during this situation, she left a voicemail to her target saying, quote, "You know what, you stupid bitch? We're going to raise pigs, and you're going to be the first one I feed to the pigs. You got it?" End quote. And that to me was like, oh shit. Was she? You know what I'm saying? Anywho, that, my friends, is the story of Robert Pickton. I'm just now realizing everyone knows him as Willie, and I've been calling him Robert this whole time. So if you're confused there, sorry about that. But yeah. Anyways, my thoughts here. Look, listen, and this is all my personal thoughts. I personally feel like Robert did not work alone. There was lots of male DNA found on the property. Yes, they held lots of parties and that piggy palace or whatever. So yeah, there would be a lot of DNA there in general. But like there was male like blood found on some of the objects. I just think a lot more people were involved, and Robert did not work alone, in my opinion. More people had to know what was going on. I think people were doing bad things, knowing that they could go to the Pickton farm and easily get rid of people, or have Robert get rid of people. Like there was some kind of deal going on like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Some people say that Dave, the brother, he was like a member of the Hells Angels. So what if, in my imaginative brain, like what if the Hells Angels were like, hey, I need you to get rid of a guy, you know? And Dave's like, oh yeah, I got a farm. Like, don't worry, Robert will take care of it. Willie or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a deal like that. Again, Dave was named by sex workers as being aggressive and scary, that he would intimidate people if they spoke up about things going on at the farm. He threatened to like rape people, get rid of people. I searched high and low as to why Dave wasn't brought in for questioning by police, like at all. So this made me think that the off-duty police, the police officers, the city officials that hung out at the farm and the higher-ups, they were all protecting his ass because if he got arrested, he was going to rat on everyone. I would bet money that's probably why he wasn't brought in, because Dave was probably like, oh, you want to arrest me? Well, I'll name all you bitches and you're all going to come down with me. In my opinion. Thank you. Just had to make that clear. Plus, Dave had that demolition company. You don't think he could hide bodies? I bet you there are bodies under those houses that they built on the property. I bet you there are bodies everywhere. Who knows? Plus, another thing I was thinking about was, remember Robert was slower, Maybe Dave just... I'm not saying Robert was like a good person and didn't do anything bad. He did bad things, okay? But maybe Dave also was taking advantage of that a little bit. I don't know. Let's say Dave was like, he killed someone in my fake story. And then he would go to Robert and be like, hey, I need you to handle this. Thanks. Get rid of this. I don't know. Something about this whole story made me feel like Robert was the go-to guy to like handle things. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you go to him and you'd be like, handle it. And then he would. He was still a bad guy doing his own like shitty stuff too. But I don't think it was just him. And then plus having the Hells Angels on your side. I bet the Picktons felt like they were untouchable. And they kind of were. And then obviously, if the police departments actually did their job and cared about missing women in general, maybe, just maybe, a lot of the disappearances could have been prevented. Not even maybe. Probably. I was over here naive, I guess, thinking that police in Canada they're probably so much better and actually like do their job. But in the end, I'm like, shit, they're all the same. The story of Robert Pickton is an awful reminder of how many systems failed the victims long before he ever laid a hand on them, and how the most vulnerable are often the easiest to overlook. And at the end of the day, they all deserved better. And something bigger is going on too. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Do you think Robert Pickton really acted alone? Or do you think something more was happening behind the scenes? Am I losing it? No, I think, well, whatever, let me know. Do you really think that we'll ever really know what went down on the Pickton farm? I don't know. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know down in the comment section if you have any suggestions for a future episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know, trying to make daddy YouTube over here happy by saying that. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. You make good choices. Be safe out there. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Goodbye.